right.
Now I would like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Who better to run this forum than a former member of the United States House of Representatives? So I will turn this mic over and he will be moderating tonight. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with each and every one of you. The format for this candidate forum will be that each candidate will have the opportunity to give an opening statement of 1 minute. There will be two types of questions that will be asked tonight. There will be direct questions, which will be 1 minute and 30 seconds to the person that asked to answer directly, and then two responses of 45 seconds. And then there will also be a round of questions that will be for every member sitting up here, every candidate sitting up here, that will just be 1 minute. Now, I was given a package for 8 candidates who had gone through the questionnaires of the Denton County Conservative Coalition. And those 8 candidates that are before you here and that I prepared for are Scott Army, Brandon Gill, Douglas Robeson, Jason Kurgosian, Joel Kraus, John Huffman, Vladimir DeFranceschi, and Dr. Nima Biswas. Are you all in attendance?
Yes, sir.
Good, then we can get started. We will start with the first of the candidate introductions, 1 minute. We will start with you, Mr. Army, and work our way down.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Scott Army. I'm running for Congress because I love this country, I love this state, I love this district, and I love my children. As a grassroots conservative, I've lived in this county, this community for more than 50 years. I walked door to door in the summer of 1984 to turn this very district Republican for the first time. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Jean Campbell right here, who's the godmother of the 26th district. As a county commissioner and Denton County judge, I had the opportunity to serve. And in that time, we lowered the county tax rate year after year after year. I reduced my personal budget, my personal staff in those offices.
Time.
Is that a minute? Yes, sir. Vote for Scott Army.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nina Biswas. I'm a medical physician with 3 specialties, and I've worked many years with the Veterans Affairs in rural and underserved areas. I've also been an elected school board trustee and just completed my term this last May. I am advocate of education, and I am also a small business owner and know how to do payroll, and I want a happy, healthier, safer, and educated America.
Hi, I'm Vladimir DeFranceschi. Vladimir, just like Putin, but much nicer. Vlad for short. I am a resident of Oak Point, and I'm also a 2-time refugee from communism. First time from a Cold War Eastern European country, and a second time from California. And if you want to know my politics, they're very simple. I agree with everything in the Texas Republican Party's 2022 platform. So with that, we'll talk next.
Hi, my name is Brandon Gill. I'm an America First conservative, and I'm proud to say that I've been endorsed by President Donald Trump, as well as the House Freedom Caucus, as well as Representative Ronnie Jackson and Troy Nels as well. And I hope that I can earn y'all's support tonight as well. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Flower Mound here with my wife, my beautiful wife back there, and little 5-month-old daughter Marigold, whom we'll probably hear from tonight. I graduated from a 1A high school with 24 students, very providentially made it up to having a successful career in finance, which I left so that I could fight the radical left in conservative media. I founded an America First news outlet called DC Inquirer, and I've worked on documentaries including 2,000 Mules, and more recently I was a producer of a movie called Police State.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is John Huffman. I am the husband to the amazing homeschool mom, Elizabeth, who's not here tonight because she's shuttling kids around to basketball games as it goes. I'm the father of 3 amazing teenagers whose future in a free and prosperous America is worth fighting for. And I'm mayor of Southlake, where for almost 10 years we've delivered conservative results that we wish we were seeing in Washington, D.C. Everything from fighting the evil ideologies of cultural Marxism to balancing budgets and cutting taxes. I'm running for Congress because the insanity of the federal government is quite literally threatening our way of life. And if we don't send experienced conservative fighters to Washington, D.C., we are going to lose everything that we hold dear and all the liberty that our founding fathers set up and that all of our men and women in uniform have fought and died for. My name is John Huffman. I would love your vote on March the 5th. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Jason Ferguson. I'm the only Jason on the ticket, so don't worry about the last name. I am a technologist, I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a community builder. I've worked in technology over 20 years, so if anyone's going to be able to speak toward AI or Hunter Biden's laptop, that'd be me. With that, I've built communities in my technology arena. I've also built communities. I worked for a mega church for 5 years, created the largest church network in the country. Was a co-founder in that, very proud of that. And what I look to bring to Washington is not only Republican conservative, or Reagan conservative values, but also the putting a firewall around our values so that no law gets passed that can attack those. And also building community, both with my community or constituents, as well as with other people in Congress and other federal branches. Thank you.
My name is Doug Robeson. I've been a 4-time district judge in Denton County. I am a lifelong Republican. It is not true that I was able to vote for Abraham Lincoln in the first election in 1860, which raises a point I wish to make right here. People ask me, hey, you're a guy with gray hair. Why are you running? I've been asked that here tonight. I'm running because our kids and our children and their children need a future America that is every bit as good as the one we grew up in. I want one where freedom and speech, freedom of religion is not frowned upon, but you have the right to exercise it. And thank you, sir. And I'll end, but I do request you vote for me, or for someone who has the same vision. Thank you.
Good evening, Colonel West, fellow candidates, and beautiful people of our district. My name's Bert Thacker. I'm a patriot. I love our country. I don't have President Trump's endorsement, but I do have my wife's. And that's awesome. I'm a United States Navy veteran. I work in construction. I'm a Jeopardy champion. And I'm tired of weirdos getting into government who don't represent me. I believe that we need to lower the cost of health care, fix our broken immigration status, stop the One Belt, One Road initiative of the CCP, have free and fair elections, and bring power back. And it's time America is run by Americans. God bless you. I hope you all vote for me.
Madam President, I do have a point of order to be brought up, and this is for your approval. I can use my Army voice. Madam President, I do have a point of order to bring up because one of the candidates that are sitting here did not turn in a questionnaire. I do not have that, and I do not have him for preparation. It's your determination as to whether or not this candidate can participate in this forum tonight.
It's me, guys. I didn't know about it until very recently.
You showed up, let him play.
Thank you.
You're welcome. B-U-R-T?
Yes, sir.
Thacker?
Thacker with a T.
Okay, so Mr. Robeson is not sitting.
No, Mr. Robeson's here, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. Joel Krause is absent. Okay, and I'll put you in the place of Mr. Krause and Mr. Thacker.
Thank you all.
Okay, Our first question will be for each candidate to ask, and we will start with Mr. Army and work our way down. We see a lot of people that put up signs and says conservative Republican. The question to each and every one of you in 1 minute: define conservatism.
Point of order. 90 seconds?
1 minute.
Okay. I thought the instructions.
No, the 90 seconds are when we have a direct question with two follow-ups.
My apologies. Define conservative?
Define conservatism.
I'm conservative because I believe in the Constitution as it's written, a narrow interpretation of the Constitution, that all individuals are created equally, that we have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I believe the best government is government that governs the least, and that it is our responsibility to be ever mindful of that role as individuals who represent you. We have too many that go to Washington that end up representing themselves, and I will fight and work for you, members of this district, because this is my home also. This is where I was raised, this is where I raised my family, and I want to ensure that we are moving forward with our conservative values, taking our conservative values to Washington, D.C. to change Washington, not to bring dictates back here from elsewhere to expect us to fall in line from the outside. So we need to elect from ourselves to represent us in Washington and make a difference. Thank you.
I'm just going to stand here and say. So, in my view, basically, conservatism means basically I align with the U.S. Constitution and try to uphold its freedoms and the rights for the people. I also understand there is a Texas Constitution, which is very well aligned with whatever is in the U.S. Constitution. So I'm very respectful of whatever is in our Constitution, all the rights and freedoms, which was done with a lot of thought by our founding fathers. And I believe we have the duty to protect those rights and do it to the best way possible. And that is why I would like to go to Congress to do this fight. I have the experience and the leadership with many, many years of training and experience with work to do this. Thank you.
Very simple. God, people, states, federal government. What it means to be a conservative is to understand that and believe that and live your life according to it. The fundamental thing to understand is that unlike anywhere else in the world, and I'm from somewhere else and I've traveled a lot of places, it's only in America that people understand that people existed before government. So the conservative doesn't look to government for solutions. The conservative first looks at self, then neighbors, and then to anything bigger than that, which is the next step up, is the state. Thank you.
I think conservatism is fundamentally a statement of prudence. It's a recognition that the society that we get to enjoy today, our economy, our social fabric, are all things that were developed previous to us by our parents and grandparents and our ancestors. And that everything that we have today is because of things that they did and values that they had. So the question that we have today as conservatives is, how do we maintain that social fabric and that economy that they gave us? And particularly the question is relevant whenever we are fighting against a radical left who wants to absolutely destroy it, who is the absolute antithesis of the fact of the values that our parents and grandparents had. And I think that the answer in the American context is to fight like crazy the radical left. So that means whenever the radical left wants open borders, we have to tell them, no, we're not only going to close the border, we're going to deport illegal aliens. Whenever they want to put dirty books in our schools, we're going to tell them, you have no right to be in civil society if you want to put pornographic books in our schools, and we're going to keep fighting you.
Colonel, that's a great question. So I'll tell you what conservative is. Conservative means we believe in limited government in a real way. And we believe that this government is limited by the constitutional powers as laid out by the founding fathers. And that we believe, per the Constitution, that our rights come from God and not from government. Because we know that if government grants rights, then what? Government can take them away. That we believe the ultimate arbiter of liberty is with the individual, and that we as a society have to protect liberty, but we also have to protect virtue as well. And in today's day, what conservative means is fixing the insanity that's going on in Washington, D.C., because we're about to lose our country. It means closing the borders. It means fixing the mess that the Biden administration has intentionally perpetrated on the American people. It means balancing the budgets and getting rid of the incredible amount of spending that's leading to record inflation. It means fighting the weaponized woke federal government and getting them out of our lives. Because this matters, we're about to lose this country unless we fight back.
I think it boils down to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We as conservatives believe in the original belief that the founders had, that we the people give the government power. And as we are now, the government has overstepped that horrendously. They're weaponizing the government against us. Pretty soon, we're going to have to struggle with our voice, our vote, our ability to speak our minds, our ability to protect our families, our children, and the government is doing what? So I hold us accountable for that. I hold us conservatives, us Republicans, and we frankly need to do more, because as we vote people into office, we need to look at not just what they say, not just the endorsements, not just the support, but look at what they say, what they've done, how they're going to attack it. You need someone to be aggressive, someone that's going to go toe-to-toe with progressives. And I believe President Trump will be in office again, which means we need to put in laws to protect our freedoms. And if he's not, you need someone like me who's going to fight for every inch, not allow one of our freedoms to be put in an omnibus where I have to sign it. It will not happen. If the government has to stop, we'll stop it. Thank you.
Conservative, do you all have my push card? If you don't, look at it. It says Republican for Congress. Because to me, the phrase Republican and conservative should mean one and the same thing. You shouldn't have to say conservative Republican, and I appreciate the fact that you all vet people and ask these questions. And what does conservative mean? It means you put the Constitution first. It trumps everything else. And an example of that is we have the right to vote in this country. And there's a clause that says, Article 1, Section 4, that says, the legislature shall set the rules. We had 6 states where governors, Democratic governors, set the rules deliberately so Democrats could win. That is wrong. The Constitution should trump. It also means, and most importantly, and I'll stop, I'll get to the next point. Thank you.
To me, conservatism is very simple. It means a smaller federal government. We have 5,400 laws that are passed by the federal government. Laws that basically turn virtually everybody into this room into felons if the government wanted to send it that way. That is not freedom. I identify as a conservative Republican because I want a smaller federal government. I'll just be blunt. I think it's insane that we're sending $250 billion to the Ukraine when we have 85,000 homeless vets who rest their head on a concrete pillow. Or $34 million to Pakistan for gender studies when we have Decatur, which doesn't have enough to fund its police department. Or a situation where they're disenfranchising the rights of voters, not only through a systematic oppression through big tech, which silence voices, but to remove presidential candidates from the ballot. I'm a legal immigrant. I came to this country because this is the greatest country on earth, full of freedom. So I'm a conservative because that's what I believe in, and that's what conservatism is to me. God, government, people.
Thank you. We will have our first direct question, which will have 2 follow-ups. A direct question is 1 minute and 30 seconds for the person directly responding, 45 seconds for those that are giving the response. This first direct question will go to Jason Kurgosian, and the 2 responses will be from Bert Thacker and Vladimir D. Franceschi. The question to be answered is, America faces a $34 trillion debt, and we know that they just recently passed a $1.69 trillion spending package, and it is clear that government spending is an issue. Please explain your understanding of baseline budgeting, and would you support zero-based budgeting?
So first thing first, historically what's happened with Congress is they will tout how they've cut back on spending. And what they mean is they've got their foot on the accelerator. They're still going faster and faster, but they've slowed down just a little bit. The point is that we keep spending and spending. I remember whenever it was President Obama running for office, how all across the news, across Fox News, it was a $20 billion deficit, or 20 trillion. My problem is that that's no longer apparently an issue for us today. So the answer to that is to first curb government spending at the highest level. So we start first with a balanced budget act. I'd like to see that put into place. I'd like to see where we're not held over a barrel with pork from the opposite party. So I believe that if we can have the option of vetoing at a congressional level, having a single line item veto would be useful. I do believe that President Trump will be our next president. I do expect that we will be able to have these issues come into play where we can directly affect the overall budget plan. Right now, we actually are not only out of control, but it's a planned growth. And I think that our party is partially responsible for that because we've allowed things to happen. We've allowed these things to grow, and we've not done anything whenever we've been empowered to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Thacker? Yes, sir. 45-second response.
So when the budget is, when the debt is $34 trillion and Moody's and Fitch have downgraded us from AAA to AA, and the interest on the debt alone is $1.7 trillion, nothing is going to get fixed until we address the root of the problem. Number one, we have to cut the size of government. First thing I want to do day one is repeal the Patriot Act. Between the FISA court systems, thank you. Number two, we have to cut unnecessary agencies. Department of Education can be transferred to the Treasury, it can be transferred to the Justice Department, FBI.
If I can interject, the question was about baseline budgeting and zero-based budgeting.
No more omnibuses. We have to get back to single-issue bills, but more importantly, we have to also budget to grow the United States. So I recommend we have to have critical infrastructure manufacturing here in the United States and also raise minimum skill, get trade schools at the end of high school, get Americans back to work.
Yes, so my short answer to the short question is I'm for any formula and any process of the Congress making a budget that cuts the budget, period. But the thing everybody has to understand is that, as I tried to say, is super quick, right? God, people, states, then federal government. The federal government is being used against us, and it's being used against the Constitution because it can go print unlimited money, because Congress is violating the Constitution by abdicating its responsibility to be the one to print money and decide what it's worth. And until we get that back in order, it doesn't matter how much we call out single items and things and whatnots. We have to eliminate the way the government's being funded so they can't be weaponized against us.
We will have another 1-minute question that will go to each and every person. We will start off with Mr. Thacker, so please pass the microphone down. The question to everyone, all the candidates, is what is the most important principle of the United States Constitution, and what do you see as the most important amendment?
The Second Amendment is the reason why all the other amendments exist. Let's just be real blunt. And after that, the First Amendment. Right now, we've seen an assault on our First Amendment rights, the likes of which we've never seen. We saw it happen during COVID. We saw it happen with the election, where any opposition to the narrative of the state was crushed with brutal efficiency. If we can't dissent against the ruling class, if we can't have an opinion that's our own, it has absolutely destroyed our system. John Adams also said that our government is made for a religious people. And I believe right now the Democratic Party has had government-created religions, which they are using to justify every action, from the Green New scam all the way down to DEI, and we have to get to a reset. So the answer, the Second Amendment and the First Amendment, sir.
45 seconds?
No, 30 seconds. I mean 1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute.
1 minute.
All right. Thank you. The most important part of the Constitution is the first 3 words. We, the people, is what Republicans believe. We believe in the power of the individual. What do the Democrats believe? They believe in big, can you all hear me? Thank you. They believe in big government tyranny. And he just went through the things that happened in COVID, where there was no freedom of religion, there was no freedom of speech. We were attacked as haters, we're attacked as people who are unscientific, all of which is untrue. And I also agree with, and Bert, by the way, is a very bright guy. He's a national Jeopardy champion. And so we're going to find also that a lot of us agree with each other. We are Republicans. 80% of us, 80% we agree. The Second Amendment is the basis of all other rights. And I'm a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm carrying now. I believe in the constitutional right to carry. And I'm done. Thank you.
Just 1 minute for each.
So I definitely would agree with we the people being the most important part, as I've said before. I do believe the right to bear arms is also the most powerful one that protects the others, but I would actually say freedom of speech by far is the most important, because our voice is the most important part of us. If we don't speak up, we don't stand our ground, then we will lose what we cherish, what we've inherited. So I firmly believe that we as a people need to unite. And as much as we can't unite with the other side about common beliefs anymore, we can unite together about the things we believe in. So Republican, conservative, we need to wash away those concepts. We need to unite on what we believe in together, which is a strong America made of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we push forward against those that are opposed to that, those that actually do not want this form of government. Why they're here, why they're fighting for this place is beyond me. If they don't love it, then why are they here? We, on the other hand, inherited this, we love it, and we will protect it. Thank you.
All right, well, I'll agree with some of my colleagues here. The Second Amendment is the reason why the rest of the amendments are protected. You know, after the Uvalde shooting, I was mayor, and everyone, national media, and all of the woke levels of government wanted us to institute the gun laws, just like they pushed every single elected official in the country. And what we said is we're going to reconvene our school safety task force, and we are going to increase our funding for school resource officers, because we know that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. So the Second Amendment is absolutely the most important to me. And I'll tell you, the principle of the Constitution, I think is completely lost to us today, is that of federalism. The federal government is a creation of the states, not the other way around. And when we lose that idea that the federal government is a creation of the states and that it should listen to the states, then we get this weaponized federal government full of bureaucrats that you didn't elect, that you can't fire, and who don't think they work for you, who are running amok through Washington, D.C. And until we fight back against the woke weaponized federal government, none of this gets any better. Thank you.
I think the most important principle of the U.S. Constitution is that of limited government, and more specifically, that any power that is not specifically delineated in the Constitution to the federal government should not be given to the federal government. It's a document of positive law. I think as we're looking at the amendments, the First Amendment is definitely the most important, and that's why the founders put it first, and that's our freedom of religion. Our entire social system, our entire government is predicated on having a holy, moral, and religious Christian people. Without that, our government collapses and our way of life collapses, and the founders knew that. Secondly, of course, the Second Amendment is the one that upholds all the rest. And we'll be very clear, the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. It's about protecting us against a tyrannical government.
This is awesome, because I don't have to say anything. I agree with everything everybody's already said. It's tough to be different. Bottom line is, for me, everybody's touched on it. 10th Amendment, right? The federal government is things that are not enumerated, expressly enumerated in the Constitution, are reserved to the states and the people. Why? Because it is the consent of the people that made the states and then allowed the states to delegate some of their sovereignty to the federal government to only do things that the states can't do by themselves any other way better. So that should always be a litmus test, right? A metric for how do you decide as a congressman, is this law useful, not useful, how should we do, what should we do it? If it can't be done locally, then look to the federal government. If it can't be done to the states, look at the federal government. The other thing is, just to mention, right, we're broke. The debt we have is never going to be paid off. It's going to be paid off by printing money to debase your dollar so it's cheaper to pay it back. The The federal government is in danger of becoming a tyranny and collapsing, and your safeguard is your state. And that's possible because there's a 10th Amendment that empowers the states to repair what the federal government has broken.
So I believe the most important principle is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe every U.S. citizen here deserves that principle in full action. And of course, the most important amendment would be the First Amendment, because without having freedom of speech and without being able to express yourself, we don't really have anything. And that goes for everything, whether it's, all types of people, all types of cultures, religion, that have that freedom to do that. And we should not be able to take it away from anybody who is trying to express themselves, because then that puts us at the same level of some other countries that that I'm talking about. And that also goes for medical literature. And the pursuit of happiness is very important, because we've had a lot of mental health problems that should be touched upon at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe the most important principle is that we are a constitutional republic where we send representatives to do our work, to represent our values, and to do the will of the people, for the people, and for the benefit of our future generations. Most important amendment is number 1, as protected by number 2, special shout outs to 9 and 10. I'd like to get rid of 16 and 17, and my new favorite ones will be the ones that we get passed on a balanced budget amendment and a term limits amendment.
Okay, the next question will be a direct question. One of you will be selected for a minute and a half, and then 45-second responses. The minute and a half response will be from Scott Army, and the 2 responses will be from John Huffman and, let's see, number 2, Dr. Nina Biswas. Here's the question. Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville made a stand against the Department of Defense for their violation of the Hatch Act. Do you support Senator Tuberville's position, and why?
Where we've come to in our Congress and this administration and the federal government is that we must take a strong stand. So when we have the red lines in the sand that we cannot move past, we are left now in today's world of having to use the tools to make that final stand. And I don't use that term lightly. We are very much in the final stand on many issues. So I do support individual senators taking a strong stance to get action out of this administration or out of this Congress. Another clear example of this is the stand we must take now to get action on our border. We must, as Senator Tuberville is setting an example in this respect, also demand that we will have no action, no spending until we have action on our borders, and willing to stand firm and stand tall on that issue as well, so that we can finally get action from this administration and get action from the other side. So I applaud senators who stand up for what they do believe in. I wish we had more members of Congress that were willing to stand tall for our values. Too many are more interested in either going along to getting along or counting up their Facebook followers. We have to have members of Congress who are now willing to take stands.
Who's got first response, though? I'm sorry, I got it back. You have first response. 45 seconds.
Yes. So, as I mentioned before, we have a very strong constitution, and it was a lot of thought that was put into this. And we have aligned very well. I think still U.S. is the best nation in the world. If we have issues with corruption and anything else, we have to do a little bit of fixing, but it still stands as the best nation. And I hope to make those changes once I get to Congress.
Yeah, so Senator Tuberville stood up because he saw what we have all seen, which is some of the flag officers in the U.S. military are out there pushing their agenda, not only on the troops, but on the public, and it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to all of our veterans in this room. And the fact of the matter is, every single man and woman who has served the United States military, served us in uniform, should be applauded. We thank them. But there is a woke mind virus in the U.S. military, specifically in some of the flag officers, that some of the senators and the congressmen, we have to go up and actually take a stand to try to get that out. We cannot allow the U.S. military to go the way of the rest of the federal bureaucracies and get woke and weaponized against the American people. I'll fight against that in Congress.
1 minute questions. That means each of you get an opportunity to take 1 minute, and we will start with Mr. DeFrancesi. The question, for those of you that remember the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers, Currahee was the motto of the Parachute Infantry Regiment, the 3rd Brigade, the 506. Currahee is a Cherokee word that means stands alone. What are you willing to stand alone for as a member of Congress? Each one.
Okay, hopefully you guys will still elect me. The one thing that I'm most passionate about and that will stand for is what I mentioned last time I spoke a moment ago. It is the way that the federal government is funded. The way the federal government is funded, that on our credit first, right, takes from some people, us who work hard, pay taxes, and follow the rules, and gives them to others. That's socialism to start with. But the other part is that it's able to live beyond its means and do stuff that's all of this wokeness stuff, all of the things that are happening that we don't like is happening because the government can spend more than it earns. It doesn't earn anything, but what it can tax from us. So if there's one thing that I would invest all of my energy is to deny the other side the ability to wage war against us. And the way that they wage war against us is that they take our tax money, they take our good credit, borrow against it, and then spend, what do we hear? $500 million on illegal migrant camps on the border going out to NGOs. You take that $500 million away, all that stuff goes away.
I'll tell you, the first thing that comes to mind that I would stand alone on, and a hill that I would absolutely be willing to die on, is that for life. Because I think if we're not going to stand up against infanticide and some of the most grotesque, barbaric practices of abortion that the left is pushing, we've got nothing else that we're going to stand for. But I'll tell you one where I will stand alone, and frankly a lot of times will be standing alone, and that is on the 2020 election. I think we have far too many Republicans in Congress right now who will not say unequivocally and directly that the 2020 election was 100% stolen from President Trump. I think that is an absolute disgrace. Because if we are not going to stand up for the 2020 election, what's going to happen in 2024 and what's going to happen in 2028? We have to have Republicans who have a backbone and who will fight against the left to secure our elections. Thank you.
So I'm going to stand alone on the very clear truth that what's going on in Washington, D.C. is hopelessly broken and intentionally so. I know so often we look on social media and we look on TV and we think, are we the crazy ones? Like, certainly they can't believe the things that they're pushing out in the media. They can't actually believe that a $34 trillion debt is good for the future of this country. They can't actually believe that no meaningful southern border is going to stabilize our way of life. They don't. They don't believe that. So many times I think we as Republicans kind of twist ourselves into not, trying to convince ourselves that these people up there are stupid. They are not. They know what they're doing, and they know what they're doing is destabilizing this country at a fundamental level. And so the system is broken, and it's been intentionally so. So I don't care if I'm alone. I don't think I will be. We've got a Republican caucus that I think is ready to fight. But I will stand for all of you and every single voter in the 26th district and tell you the truth in Washington, D.C., and fight against the weaponized federal government every single day I'm in office.
Stand alone, that's a good one. Because the reason I'm here is because I was living my life, doing my career, and I see the weaponization of government against us. And what I realize, is, which most of you realize here, is that they're using the government to silence us. And that is irreversible. So for me, I'm looking at this as, If I'm the last one to stand up for each and every bit of our freedoms in Congress, then I will be. But what's funny about the alone part is I obviously won't be alone. I'm a community builder. So first things first, you're my community. I need your help to make that happen. I need your help to raise awareness as we find out more and more about what the bureaucracy is doing there. I also am going to create community with other federal departments, the ones that are freedom-loving Americans that love this country. I'm going to be working with them to create whistleblowers, to hold bureaucracy accountable ahead of these programs, and again, help raise awareness. I won't be alone because we all stand for the same thing. Thank you.
The one thing I'll stand alone on, the fair application of the rule of law. That was the catalyst for why I ran. I'm a judge. And what's happening to President Trump is an atrocity. If he's coming for him, they're going to come for us. I grew up in a constitutional republic. I don't want my child or my grandchildren to grow up in a banana republic where every time there's an opponent, you have a false, by the way, anyway, where false charges are brought against you. Is which? Ah, thank you. Anyway, I don't want to grow up, my children to grow up or child and her children to grow up and be in a banana republic where false charges are brought against every opponent and then you have a sham trial. That needs to stop. It needs to stop now. And the only people who can stop it are us. Thank you.
Picture me in a room with 435 people. You think I'm going to stand alone? Heck no. I'm going to build bridges and coalitions because I'm going to find people and I'm going to convince people why the following ideas are absolutely paramount. That the Congressional Budget Office never touches another dollar to cut the Veterans Affairs Administration. That we make sure that on day one we issue a bill that requires a federal ID if you're going to vote in a federal election. I'm going to work harder than anybody else to introduce an amendment for term limits because that's why I'm doing this. I got a job. You know, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And I'll tell you this, government is not going to work by standing alone. It's going to work by building coalitions. I'm a nuclear reactor operator at one point in my life. I commission hyperscale data centers and I work in construction. All I do is deal with people with giant egos. And I'll tell you this right now, my ego is so big there's room for everyone else's in it. So, I will absolutely stand and fight for the Second Amendment as well as our inalienable rights. I'll pass the mic around.
I'm willing to stand alone for fiscal responsibility. This $34 trillion debt and out-of-control spending was 100% created by Congress and can only be fixed by Congress. It is our exclusive responsibility. All of the other issues we need a lot more people to work on, but Congress can fix this issue and must fix this issue themselves. So I'm going to be standing alone in opposing all earmarks, in a civilian hiring freeze, in budgetary, balanced budget amendment, every step of the way to reduce spending in the federal government. And if it means that I start my own Festivus report or Golden Fleece report and start calling out everybody else's goofy spending bills, I'll do that as well. And I'll probably be standing alone pretty quickly when I do that. But I was raised by a member of Congress who never once brought pork home. I'm not going to either, sorry about that, but we're going to cut this debt and deficit.
So as a physician and working with veterans for so many years, I think a healthy nation is built of healthy people. And the way we start that is, first of all, by strengthening our educational system. And that is why I had run for my local school board as a school board trustee. Now, I had the endorsement of my entire community when they elected me to public office to actually represent their kids, their educators, and the community as a whole. My first intention would be to bring in proper health care for all American citizens, and especially with a focus on mental health, which will bring up our sense of happiness and well-being. The next thing would be preventing woke ideals and also improving kids' education. I'm not a foreigner to budgets because I worked on our budgets for the school and we brought it down to a zero budget with a balanced budget. Thank you.
Thank you. The next round of questions will be a direct question with 2 responses. That means a minute and a half and 2 45-second responses. The direct question will be directed to Dr. Biswas. And the first response will be Mr. Robinson, and the second response will be Mr. Gill. Here's the question. We often hear elected officials say governing is a business of compromise. What is your view of compromise, and where do you draw the line?
So, as I was mentioning, I was an elected official for my local school board, and as you know, it was a very difficult time. It was during the COVID years. There were many agendas on the table: mask, no mask, vaccination, remote schooling, bringing the kids back to school. And I worked with the entire team. Now, I was called a team of one, and there is actually an article in one of the newspapers that said that, because I stood by my voice and I said, I am going to do what's right for the kids, what's right for the community. So my compromise is only to the limit where it is being done as a rightful action, not endangering the life of anybody, not bringing in any kind of suffering, and that is where I will draw the line. And the other thing that I would like to say is I was very successful and passed a lot of training against fentanyl and did all the agendas that they never expected to pass in so many years that I was on the board. Now, the other thing I would also like to say is a similar thing for healthcare, and whether it's a border, every agenda is going to be treated in the similar way as a voice of reason. I do believe we have to understand what is the basic reason that we are running into these issues, work on all the agendas, and do it cooperatively until we draw the line on some of them. Thank you.
Simple. With the current set of Democrats, no compromise. It's that simple. We have fundamental things at stake in this country. In the old days, and I'm old enough to remember the Blue Dog Democrats and the Democrats, the Reagan Democrats, they actually believed that America was great and you could talk to them. That's changed. We got AOC and the Squad, and we've got people up there who they don't believe America's great. They want to destroy it. And we need to take the position that no, America's great, Republican values are great, and prime among them are that there is individual liberty. Sorry. We okay here? All right. But anyway, I'm making my point, and the point is, we're not going to compromise with the Democrats. That's over. We need to be assertive and push our view in a sound way. Thank you.
The reason that the country's in the state that it's in right now, with open borders, an economy that's collapsing, a government that's weaponized against conservatives and Christians, dirty books flooding our children's schools, is that we have Republicans who are still living in the 1980s or the 1990s who think that we're up against decent people who want to sit here and have an intellectual debate about policy. That Democrat Party is dead and gone. To your point, the Blue Dog Democrats are gone. This is the Democrat Party who wants to lock up their political prisoners, their political enemies, who want to take President Trump off of the ballot because they know that he's going to beat them in 2024, who will rig elections, and who have no problem with, again, some of the most grotesque and barbaric practices of abortion. So I don't want to compromise with the left. I want to fight the left, and I want to beat them, and I want to drive them from political life. Because I think we are in a political war right now. And it is a battle truly for the soul of this country. And it's an existential fight, and only one of these two sides can win. We have diametrically opposed conceptions of where this country should go and who we should be as a people. And only one can win, and I want to make sure that the conservative side, the side that's aligned, I believe, more with Christ, is the one that wins. So no, I don't want to compromise. I want to win, fight, win, and drive them from political life.
The next question will also be a direct question. The primary person to answer will be Mr. John Huffman. First response, Brandon Gill. Second response will be Jason Kurgosian. And remember, the response is 1.5 minutes. The direct response is 1.5 minutes. The two responses after that is 45 seconds. Here's the question. Has President Joe Biden committed impeachable offenses? And if your answer is yes, you must cite the constitutional amendment or cite the article in the Constitution that pertains to it. And if no, then explain why.
Today or
Starting a minute and 30 seconds, you already lost 10 seconds.
Listen, of course, I can't wait to watch impeachment proceedings. I mean, all of Article 2 deals with the executive powers of the office of the president. In my view, he's violated them all. He's violated them intentionally, from the destruction of the southern border, which I've seen. I went down there in November to see, actually before this race was a thing, to meet with some of the mayors and to talk to Border Patrol and to see with my own eyes. And the most tragic thing about that was they know how to fix it. The men and women in uniform at the border know how to fix it, and they were very clear that they are not being allowed to fix it by a Biden administration that is trying to flood this country and destabilize our way of life with mass illegal immigration. From the ballooning federal budget to a weaponized government that does not care what you think and doesn't care most of the time what Congress thinks. We have to get control of this weaponized government, or none of the rest of this is going to work. And we can't do it without a Republican president, and we can't do it without a Congress that's going to pass laws that the Republican president can sign. So yeah, absolutely, Biden needs to be out of office. The guy's not even there mentally anyway. I'm sorry, he's not. And it's a tragedy that he's going to have another 12 months to further stabilize everything that's great about this country. We have to fight it, and we'll start in January 2025.
I just want to remind those responding, you have to cite a constitutional article for the impeachment offense that you bring up.
There's too many to cite, Colonel.
Give me two. You cited the border. What article or what principle in the Constitution?
Well, all of Article 2 deals with the executive power of president. I'm not sure I could cite you chapter or verse, but I think if I could, we might be here a lot longer than we've reserved this room for.
Okay.
I'll start by citing specifically the Constitution lists high crimes and misdemeanors as criteria for impeachment. And there are actually several that Joe Biden has had just in the past few years. The first one, I think, is the weaponization of government against conservatives and Christians. If that doesn't constitute a high crime and misdemeanor, I don't know what is. Right now, our federal government is targeting pro-life activists via the FBI. They're going after January 6ers, and very few Republicans in Washington have the guts to stand up for what the federal government is doing for January 6ers against them. It is weaponized against conservatives, against Christians, and that alone is criteria for impeachment. I think the border as well. But I've got to stop here.
So we'll start with baseline 0. He took an oath to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution. We can cite quite a few high crimes and misdemeanors. The protecting of our borders is important. I think that when you look at the overall game plan, though, I don't believe Biden ever had an intention of protecting, preserving, and defending the Constitution. If what's being alleged now comes out regarding crimes regarding receiving money through his son from foreign entities, that also is high crimes and misdemeanors. Thank you.
And just to help everyone out, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution is known as the Guarantee Clause. The federal government is supposed to guarantee to every state in the union to protect them from invasion. This will be a 1-minute question to each and every one of you. The Republican Party of Texas has 13 propositions on the March primary ballot. What are your 3 most important propositions? And we will start with Mr. Huffman.
Could you repeat that question one more time?
Sure. The Republican Party of Texas has recently passed in December at their state Republican Executive Committee meeting 13 propositions. Those 13 propositions will be on the March GOP primary ballot. What are your 3 most important of those 13 propositions?
To be honest with you, I'm not familiar with all 13 of them, but I will tell you what my top 3 priorities are. And that's number 1, fixing the border crisis. Because remember, it's a crisis, but it's a national crisis that's at the border. We cannot have a functioning country without the border. Number 2, we have to get control of this incredibly bloated federal budget. And so the first thing we have to get, once the border is under control, which we can do in 30 days with a Republican president and a Republican Congress, we have to get control and actually get back to zero-based budgeting, which we've done in Southlake for a long time. Every single year I've been on city council, almost a decade, we've balanced our budgets. That's why we have a AAA bond rating from all 3 ratings agencies, one of 2 cities in Texas to have that distinction. And we absolutely have to start fighting back against a woke, weaponized federal government so that we can get the bureaucrats out of our lives.
So I actually did read these. Now, did I commit them to memory? I did not. But let's start with, I believe on there was the right to life. So protecting the unborn in this country, which I stand strongly behind. When I was in high school, I was a part of the groups that would reach out to other students, because at that age, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misunderstanding. They frankly need an ear. They need compassion. So I believe that's a significant one. I believe in closing the borders was also a strong one. Again, like I said, we have to be aggressive with this, not just stand back while they let it happen, acting like it's not. We need to be in their faces on this. And then lastly is balancing the budget. The Republican Party of Texas is looking to basically make sure that we're safeguarding our future for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.
The 3, protect the right to life, protect the right to life, protect the right to life. It's, what does it say in the Declaration? The pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Life is paramount. And if children cannot have life, everything else is pointless. Thank you.
So, for me, a very big issue, especially because I've worked in power generation for a long time, is our grid. So strengthening our grid and hardening the grid is to make sure nothing like Snowmageddon ever happens again is very important to me, and I want to carry that to the national level. The border, as a legal immigrant, man, I got to tell you, you want to talk about the 10th Amendment? The last question was just about what would you do to impeach Biden. When you have a situation where the federal government is ready to sue the state of Texas for wanting to enforce its border laws, what kind of madness is this? And obviously, when it comes to life, let me make this abundantly clear. I will absolutely do everything in my power to keep Roe v. Wade out of the federal government and make sure it's in the hands of the voters, but also I will do everything I possibly can to make sure we get a law that makes late-term abortion illegal.
Thank you. I have not had an opportunity to review all 13 items yet either. In the last month or so, we've kind of been a little bit consumed with issues facing the country, but I can guarantee you that the issues that are important to Texas are important to all of us, and those are protecting the rights of the people, protecting the rights of our families, and any of the propositions that are geared toward restricting this out-of-control federal government, preserving and returning power to the states and to the people are going to be critical propositions for us to all get behind for the beginning. I can tell you that I greatly appreciated the opportunity to vote on the constitutional amendment elections that we had back in November, and look forward to promoting conservative principles through messaging that we do through our primary ballot propositions as well.
So I have actually had the opportunity to be in one of these legislative sessions, especially being on the school board and being able to see how our laws are passed and how it is actively voted on. It's a very, very interesting process and involves a lot of community, a lot of people, a lot of different voices and opinions. And I do believe everybody's voice is as important, and we cannot just go with one race, one religion. I think America is a very diverse country. We have to take into account how this country has changed and how they may input into the laws as well. The other thing I would like to say is that I know that there is a big abortion issue right now in one of these the propositions that are coming up, and I know that in a lot of ways Texas has been voting on this, and our constituents have been voting on it, and they usually do a very good job, so I will support them.
I'll try to keep it simple. I'm a lawyer. What a lawyer knows is that the devil's in the detail, and being a good lawyer is paying attention to detail. That's why practicing law feels like being in hell. But on this issue, it's very simple for me. I will vote the way the True Texas Project recommends to vote, period.
I'll say my top three things from that. One is sealing the border, and I think that that's one of the biggest reasons that President Trump endorsed me, is because he knows that I'm going to fight like crazy to help pass his border agenda. What does that mean? It's not only sealing the border, it's not only reforming our asylum laws and building the wall, it's deporting every single illegal alien that Joe Biden imported into this country. Because we all know, if we're being very honest about it, that he imported them into this country so that he could tear apart the social fabric of our nation, sow the seeds of chaos and destruction, and import millions upon millions upon millions of future Democrat voters. That's the new way of rigging elections. So I'm going to fight like crazy against that. The second one is on gender mutilation surgeries. The left has made it a cause célèbre to promote what not long ago we would find to be utterly grotesque practices of mutilating children's gender. I think that that is disgusting, and frankly, if you want to do that to a little child, I think that you should be in jail. Number three, I'll say, is we're going to stand up for life. One of the things that terrifies me the most is knowing that we serve a just God who judges men and nations.
We'll continue with a round of questions, 1 minute responses to each and every one of you. We'll start with Mr. Gill. Here's the question. Explain your understanding of Article 6, Clause number 2 of the Constitution, which is known as the Supremacy Clause.
A little Constitution here I can read, because you're gonna have to read me Article 6, Clause 2.
But you can't do that.
I can't do that. I'm not allowed to read from my Constitution. You can.
Brandon, for a second.
I believe that this has to do with states' rights, and it's a principle of federalism, which is that any power that's not specifically given to the federal government should be held at the state level. And I do think that that's a fundamental principle of our federal government and our federalist system. The founders created, and they're some of the most ingenious men in history, a system of checks and balances to stop the federal government from metastasizing like it has over the past several years. And I do believe that we need to go back to that system, which is to say that any power that is not specifically given to the federal government should either not exist at all or should be reserved to the states. So thanks.
So one thing when we talk about constitutional interpretation, it's so important to understand that this Constitution has a meaning, right? So I went to Georgetown for law school. Don't judge me. I'm a recovering lawyer. I own a construction company now, okay? But at the time, we called it the People's Republic of Georgetown because it was so crazy left. I was there from 05 to 08. And I can remember sitting in my common law classes and hearing professors tell me that this is a living and breathing document, that it changes with the times. I was like, well, it doesn't say that it does, though. I mean, it has original meaning, right? And then fighters like Scalia and others on the court would try to interpret the originalist meaning, and ultimately I think that's, I hope, winning the day. But the Supremacy Clause does say that the federal government, when acting with its enumerated powers, has supremacy over the states. However, that's only in pursuit of the enumerated powers. Right? But we had all kinds of cases, starting with Wickard versus Filburn and all of the Great Society and everything that Johnson was doing that came out of the Supreme Court that said basically anything Congress passes, if it affects interstate commerce in any way, then it takes supremacy over states. We've got to go back to where states actually matter so that we can reclaim the principles of federalism. Thank you.
So I knew with Admiral West this was going to be a challenging interview.
I was in the Army, sir, not the Navy.
And we're trauma statements here. But I knew this was going to be a challenge. I knew that a lot of constitutional questions would come out. To be honest, I probably would have needed a refresher to come to this, but I will say this. Something that we all know regarding the supremacy of the federal government. We are inundated with bureaucracy. As we know, they are not voted in. They are not accountable to us. As a result, it is harder and harder for us to maintain our rights at the state level, much less at the local and whatnot. So how do we address these issues? The challenge is that it's a system that's already in place and it supports itself. What you need is hardliners that will come in and will stand against federal weaponization of government, federal abuse of power, and actually bring visibility to checks and balances to our government. And I mean from the perspective of having whistleblowers come out and share, having us share with our communities, and get that directly to our voters. Thank you.
John was right on his interpretation of the Supremacy Clause, which says where the federal government has enumerated powers, the federal government law is supreme. The problem is they have expanded that beyond all possible connotation. And I'll just give one example. Executive actions or executive orders. Those are not laws. That's the president coming in here and saying, this is the way it's going to be. What did President Biden do? First, he had 9 executive actions. Within the first week of his office, he took away 7. Anyway, a lot. We'll agree with that. He had 9 executive actions, and he did away with the XL pipeline. He allowed transgenders in the military. He did away with Trump's regulations on saying where if you create a regulation, you got to take away 2. And those are all just orders, but they act like they are the law, and we need to obey it. They are not the law. They're his opinion. Thank you.
The Supremacy Clause is different from the 10th Amendment. It absolutely states that the federal government supersedes the rights of the states, but I argue this. When you have the 9th Amendment, which has been completely rendered inviolate because of executive orders weaponizing OSHA, or you have a situation like the Jones Act, which prevents interstate commerce, for lack of a better term, or when you have a federal government which is run amok with agencies like the ATF that can make laws which supersede the laws of the state, which are not decided upon by members of Congress. I feel that this is something that does not apply and has been used time and time again by the apparatchik of the federal government, the Department of Justice, the FBI, to subvert the intent of the Supremacy Clause. One of my roles in federal government is going to be to ensure that we are a republic, a constitutional republic, and the democracy side of it means that the states need to have power that is absolutely over the jurisdiction, over the federal government on 99% of issues. So that's my interpretation.
So we all agree the Supremacy Clause is for those powers enumerated for the federal government, which is why they passed the 10th Amendment to further constrain the Supremacy Clause when it's spelled out that anything not enumerated resides with the states. Now we're faced with the issue of that's all well and good, but what happens when the federal government refuses to enforce those laws, like we're saying with the federal government or with the southern border? So now you have states like Texas who are taking action to say where the federal government refuses to enforce the laws that were passed and Article 4, Section 4 comes into play, protecting against foreign invaders, then the states are left with no other choice but to act. So now the battle is going to be, can the state of Texas do this? Is that in violation of the Supremacy Clause? And I say it is not, because you have a federal government that is refusing to enforce those very laws that we have passed. Thank you.
So first of all, I'd like to say this was a brilliant question. And I would like to see if every person in the audience can actually answer this question. And I don't say this lightly, because we are running for U.S. Congress. Yes, we should have read the U.S. Constitution. I am a first-generation legal immigrant, so I had to take an exam, I had to study for the test, and take the oath to follow the Constitution. So I'm actually very proud today that I actually know what is the Supremacy Clause, and you know, the U.S. Constitution has all these little articles that you can go down and see exactly what it details. It's very, very detailed. And this is really these things that we need to be teaching in our school, so that our kids know what their rights are, so that they don't give it up. And that is exactly what I've been talking about. Let's start with education and build a strong nation so that every one of us can answer this question. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. It's hard to say anything that hasn't already been said. All right, so now that I come from a commie country, let me tell you how it's done. That's what the Constitution says, yes? That any power enumerated under the Constitution, the federal government supersedes whatever states might want to do. So how do you subvert that, right? You get leftist judges in. You take over your educational system. I take over your universities with a bunch of leftists with tenure who can never be fired, who then self-recruit like-minded. I snuck into Stanford because they made a mistake. They thought I was a commie because I came from a communist country. I've been punished ever since. Last thing I just want to add is, thank you, like you, I'm a legal immigrant. Thank you for taking the exam. You know who administered my test? Do you know how deep this stuff goes? The daughter of the Bulgarian ambassador to Cuba in the 1980s. That is who administered my citizenship test at the former INS. So part of the big problem is not just what the Constitution says, but how to defend it in real life.
The next question will have one direct and two responses. Mr. Robeson, it will be direct to you, and Mr. Francesi, and you will have first response, and Mr. Thacker, you will have the second response. Since everyone's talking about education all of a sudden, does the federal government have a role in education? A minute and a half for the direct response, and then 45 seconds for the follow-ups.
Well, mine will be really short. No. Now I'll say why. I firmly believe that the federal government should have no role in education, except maybe the national administration of a merit test. Other than that, like the SAT or the ACT, other than that, education should be left to the states and really to the local school boards of each and every community, because that's how community values get transmitted. Why is the federal government providing money, for example, to fund public school libraries where pornography is being fed to our children? Why is the federal government promoting teachers who think that Stalinist Marxism and Maoist communism are great examples to follow for our children? Hundreds of millions of people died under those systems, and yet there are people, elected people in our Congress, who think that's the goal we should strive for. And they're doing that to our young. And no, the federal government has no role in that, because our local communities would stop it, and we would have teachers that would be able to teach. And I'm a big fan of the 1776 project, and that should be implemented in every school district in Texas. Thank you.
Even shorter, I totally agree. And no, the federal government has no role in education. The Department of Education should be shut down, and all the money saved from shutting it down should come back to us as a cut in our income taxes. Period. It's a state's responsibility, and again, the point of it being that if you are in a minority and you want to impose your ideology on a country where the majority rejects it and doesn't want it, how do you do it? You send the power to Washington, right? You create a Department of Education. You staff your lefties into the bureaucratic jobs with life tenure, same way, right? Protect them from being fired. and then they inject their ideology from the top down and add a little bribery to go with it, where, hey, if you join this program, we'll send your state some money to pay for schools. That's the scam. That's the purpose of that. It's not to do any good. And therefore, I'm absolutely for no role for federal government, federal education, if it can be done at the state level.
We are 24th, 36th, 38th in the world when it comes to literacy, mathematics, and the sciences. You know who's number one? Anyone. China. And we spend $1.5 trillion educating our future to be failures. When the average high school graduate can't even begin to tell you what the integral of x squared dx is, but their counterpart in Chennai or China can, that's a serious problem. No, the Department of Education needs to be broken and scattered into the wind. We should send part of it to the Department of Justice when it comes for justice issues. We should send it to the Treasury Department for Pell Grants, and we can send the rest to Health and Human Services when it comes to Social Security or special needs kids. And I absolutely believe in school choice, and I think it is absolutely necessary that we get the power back to the parents. I'm tired of moms being treated as domestic terrorists when they question the school.
This next question will also be a direct with 2 responses. Mr. Gill, you will be the primary for the direct, and the first response, Mr. Huffman. Second response, Mr. Robeson. Question: should illegal immigrants be allowed to vote, serve in our military and law enforcement, and how should Congress deal with sanctuary cities?
I'm sorry, you said did illegal or legal immigrants be allowed to vote and serve? I want to make sure I heard you.
Illegal.
Illegal, okay. The answer is obviously absolutely not. The problem with our illegal immigration system, first of all, like I said, is that it's all intentional, and I talked about the reasons why earlier. If we are not going to deport every single one of the illegal aliens that Joe Biden has imported into our country, then frankly, we're not serious about fighting back against the left and taking this country back, because that is the #1 thing that is going to cause us to lose our country. It's not only the fact that they're rigging elections, but they know that they can create, if they can make these people vote, which is what the goal is, they're trying to do that in New York and other very far left cities. If they can get these people to vote, they have a Democrat majority in perpetuity. So the only thing we can do if we're serious about winning this country back is deport every single one of them. On the legal immigration system, I think that I have perhaps a little bit different conception of legal immigration than maybe even a lot of Republicans. Right now, we import 1.1 million legal immigrants into this country, and frankly, I think that number is far too high. Of that 1.1 million, between 250 and 500,000 of them are imported via chain migration. That's whenever somebody comes into this country legally, and then they bring their dad, and then they bring their dad's kid, and then their cousin, like that. And that is an absolute disgrace. We need to reduce the number of legal immigrants who are coming into this country every year. And we'll leave it at that.
The border has been broken intentionally. I've been to the border. I've heard from Border Patrol, and this can get fixed. I'm going to give you 6 ways. First, we have to reinstitute President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. We've done it before. If you're seeking asylum, you have to wait your turn in Mexico or your country of origin. Number 2, declare war on these drug cartels that are pouring this country filled with fentanyl. Number 3, we have to revisit the idea of birthright citizenship. I'm sorry, we are the only modern Western country in the world where you can walk across the border, have a baby, and that baby has the full privileges and all of the giveaways that the federal government has. Number 4, we have to deport the illegals that the Biden administration has left in. Number 5, impeach Mayorkas. The man has failed, intentionally so, get him out of office. And number 6, for heaven's sakes, we have to elect a Republican in 2024 so we can start to get this border fixed once again.
The same answer. As I told you, 80% of the answers up here we will agree on because we are conservative Republicans, I believe, that are sitting up here. The take on it, though, and the one I want to make absolutely clear, is that if you come into this country illegal, you have committed an illegal act right then and there, and you go back. In fact, and you go back to the end of the line. And we also have to make certain when people come in that instead of getting a plane ticket or a bus ride to somewhere, oh no. If you get a bus ride, it's one way. It's back over the Rio Grande, and there you go. And like I said, you're at the back end of the line. Thank you.
The next question will also be a direct with 2 responses. Primary direct is Mr. Thacker. First response will be Mr. Army. Second response will be Dr. Biswas. Here's the question. The question is, what member of Congress, and I'm speaking specifically the United States House of Representatives, most aligns with your values and why?
I'm not going to be dishonest. I have to call something out. Dude, I'm a legal immigrant who is a recipient of chain immigration because my parents came here and they brought me here. I joined the Navy with a green card, and I joined after 9/11, and I renounced my Indian citizenship to become an American citizen. That is, your father-in-law is Dinesh D'Souza. Legal immigration is the bedrock of this country, and those who are the best qualified to come here and they do it the right way should come here. Now, when it comes to illegal immigration, I will, sir, but please, I'm not doing this office to just get a pad. I'm doing this because I care. And I apologize, sir, I have to bring this up. What was your question? My sincere apology.
Well, first of all, I will allow you 1 minute as a response.
Great, thank you. I appreciate everything that you just said, and thank you for your service, first of all. I don't think that changes, though, that chain migration should not be how we run our legal immigration system. I think we should have a merit-based legal immigration system. I think absolutely your service in the military is great.
Are you saying I shouldn't be here? Are you saying?
And second thing I'll say is that my father-in-law did not come here via chain migration. He came here via a merit-based program that colleges were looking for.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the original question. What member of Congress, the United States House of Representatives,
Most aligns with your values and why?
So there are members of Congress that I absolutely like for certain reasons. So for example, Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie is someone who has been fighting on the front lines for energy independence, for making sure that we are fighting the woke indoctrination of the left. You take a look at Rand Paul, what he did to go up against the system, against Ukraine funding. That is, when he was the lone voice against Ukraine funding. You take a look at people like Andy Biggs, who have the courage to talk about the border crisis at the end. Or you take a look at other members like Bob Good, who stood up and held somebody like McCarthy accountable. We can also learn from people like Jeff Duncan, who are figuring out ways to make sure that we have energy independence. Or Representative Schweikert, who's talking about Social Security when nobody else is. Because guess what? Medicare Part B is about to run out of money by 2026, and Social Security will run out of money by 2034. And these are issues which affect everyone, not just, not just old people, but they affect everybody in this room. There are lots of people that I look up to, but there are also lots of flaws in government. I don't see people who are speaking from here. I don't see people who are fighters. I don't see people who represent me. And I see too many people who are looking at problems as opposed to looking for solutions. And I want to be somebody that reverse engineers our future. I want 3 terms. Let's see if I can make a difference.
I'm going to have to go with Dick Armey. He was from this district. He took our values to Washington, D.C. to change Washington, D.C. And you know what? He did. Because of the work he was involved in, because of the passion he had to make a change in our country. And the bottom line is, when I look at Washington today, there are no more Dick Armeys. I ask you to send another true conservative who's from this district, who understands and shares our values, who will go up there to do the work of Congress to change Washington, D.C., because, boy, it sure needs it. Thank you.
So I'm going to go with Dr. Rand Paul, and especially for what he has done during our COVID times and how strongly he has fought for every person who has any kind of suffering or any of the issues that directly affect healthcare. I would also like to bring up, because just listening to our other candidates here, the US is a very diverse country. We can continue to fight, or we can try to find solutions to help bring in some inclusivity with all races, religions. We are no longer just one race and one religion in this country. And the Democrats will certainly get ahead if we start talking this way. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm good.
This is
Well, it depends on who you're going to say.
Well, actually, the next question is for you. It's a direct with two responses. The two responses will be with Mr. Kurgosian and also Mr. Army. First and second response. Mr. Francesi, here's the question, and also Mr. Army and Mr. Kurgosian. What is your assessment of the National Defense Authorization Act that just passed?
All right, I'll tell you what Vladimir thinks about that. Besides Matt Gaetz. Why? Because he knows how to work a minority into the veto power of a minority to force a majority to act. Okay, again, I come from a commie country. I've seen all this stuff before, and this is why I'm running to explain it to you. What's in that act, what our military is undergoing is a purge. This is just what Vladimir thinks. People can agree, disagree with me, right? When you impose an illegal genetic genetic modification therapy onto troops, it's illegal, it's never approved, right? Not authorized. Who's going to quit first, right? The most sensible, us, the conservative, the lovers of America, the patriots. That's who's going to leave the military. Who are we going to replace them with? You've got now the out-of-control vacancies. Same is true for designing a female uniform for men, for doing whatever they do, transgender parties. It's all designed to make it inhospitable for us, for Americans, and forces them to quit, or forces them to bend the knee to something other than lawfulness. And its purpose is to purge the military and replace it with people that are going to be compliant with the weaponized state that's being introduced. Thank you.
Would you have voted for this NDAA?
No.
Okay.
So to that question, I also would not have voted for the NDAA. The military is about sacrifice, and many of the people in the military are about loving this country, and this is their way to serve. I think we should honor them. I also believe, like Reagan did, we need to have a strong military to protect our nation, and we should be the nation that speaks softly but definitely carries that big stick. Why wouldn't we? And if nothing else, we're a stabilizing force in this country. With that being said, there are aspects of the way that we're dealing with our military where we are stifling the good people that are coming in. But also I'd like to say that just because we have one bill passed doesn't mean we should include in it things such as the ability to spy on our own people. Thank you. Sorry.
I also would not have voted for it because it doesn't do anything to protect our southern border. I'm at the point we've cut the can to the end of the road. There's no more road for our future generations. We have to stand now, unfortunately, and say we are passing nothing further until we have action on the southern border. We must stop the bleeding so we can assess the damage and get back on the right track. The same holds true for this $34 trillion debt. With no more Band-Aids, no more stopgaps. We have to stand firm and move this in the right direction and end this budgeting that's halfway. I won't use the other term I use other than way.
All right, candidates, we've come almost to the end when we will start a quick lightning round. You'll get 30 seconds each one. So we'll start, pass the microphone down to Mr. Thacker, and we'll just keep passing the microphone up and down as we go through this lightning round. First question in the lightning round, 30 seconds. Should the federal government be involved in advancing the green energy ideological agenda? I would have kicked you off of Jeopardy. Okay, smart you know what, donkey. The question then, since you are so fast on the draw, 30 seconds, as a member of the Texas delegation, how will you advocate for Texas oil and gas?
We need to have fossil fuels ASAP. I've worked in conventional power, I've worked in nuclear power. Let me tell you right now, Texas, for example, 85 gigawatts are being generated, out of which 30% is solar and wind. This is absolutely untenable. So what I plan on advocating for is lifting the moratorium on drilling, lifting the moratorium on oil exploration. In addition to that, fast permitting nuclear power plants, and also ensuring that natural gas, especially in the Marcellus, Utica shales, the Bakken shale, etc., get right back to drilling. And when I look at West Texas and I don't see those birds moving, it breaks my heart.
Question?
Yep, lightning round.
Then in that case, I'm going to stand right here, or sit right here. I would do two things immediately. I would allow pipelines to be built. I would rescind the Joe Biden executive order prohibiting things like the XL pipeline and the other gas pipelines and oil pipelines. And two, I'd permit federal leasing on federal land immediately. And three, I would promote the fracking industry everywhere. People don't know it. We have become the Saudi Arabia of the oil and gas world, and it's fracking that has done it. Our technology. Thank you.
So what the world keeps forgetting is we have large reserves, oil, gas, etc. What we're not thinking about is we have guys like John Kerry going to the UN in Dubai and committing us to a $2 trillion plan for the US alone, $236 trillion worldwide to get rid of coal plants. That is absurd. And why is there not more pushback on it? Why are we not fighting back on that? So what everyone just said is definitely applicable, but we need to actually hold the current administration in account. And I do believe that we will have conservatives in office in a year, and John Kerry will be out, and we'll be on our way to pushing the agenda. Thank you.
Lightning, number one, develop the oil and gas underneath our feet right now, please. Number two, we need a nuclear act. We need to actually invest in nuclear technology so that we can get the cleanest, most abundant energy in the world online for all of us. Number three, get rid of the green new steel. What was the thing that came out the other day about electric vehicle charging stations? You see that? They spent $5 billion, and did you read how many they got for that? Did you read that? One. They got one charging station. I looked at my wife and said, I would have done it for $3 billion. I would have saved us a bundle of money. Let's get this energy policy back on track.
We need to allow additional drilling on public lands. We need to increase our offshore drilling. We need to cut taxes and regulations across the board of our energy industry. And I think that we need to absolutely stop federal government subsidies going to green energy. The reality is that the Green New Deal, the purpose of the Green New Deal is to promote big government socialism. It's to create a climate change crisis that the federal government can then come, step in, and intervene in our lives in ways that they never otherwise would, and we need to fight back against it.
Absolutely agree. You know what else it is? It's a giant capital market scam. It's stealing our money. So we can talk about that on another opportunity. But can I ask for a repeat of the question, and I'll limit myself to the remaining seconds to answer.
As a member of the Texas delegation, what would you do to promote the oil and gas industry that we have here in Texas?
Well, vote for anything to repeal what's on the books. Federal government has no business in telling states how to drill for energy. They have a business in regulating interstate commerce. I don't see what they have to do with how Texas generates energy and what it does with it.
Texas is the 8th largest economy in the world, and I'm very proud of Texas. And I would say anything that improves the prosperity of Texas, that will be the best way to do it. We do not need to be under any other country or be sabotaged by any other country because their oil per barrel costs so much, and that is a direct reflection of being self-sufficient. Thank you.
I believe in free markets, free market economy. let's get the federal government out of our business so that we can unleash American ingenuity, American innovation, and American wealth. Get out of that business. And let the markets decide. Let the markets allow us to control our own destinies. And if there are folks out there that want to develop wind and solar energy, good luck. You know, I think there's a future there for somebody, but let's let the markets decide and let that develop on its own.
30 seconds, staying with you. What actions need to be taken at the federal level to hinder voter fraud?
We must require IDs for voting. We must be allowed to do simple things like purge voter lists, to require more in-person voting, to allow for ballot watchers, just an overhaul of the systems to not only allow states to have greater security in their elections, but also require some standards for federal elections so that other states aren't abusing it in relation to other states.
So I think one of the primary things to do is to really ensure that we have security, and that also ensures cybersecurity. I run a technology firm, and it is amazing how much information other countries get about Americans, and we are not privy to that information. So I would say secure that and absolutely have an ID system where one ID, one person.
Nothing. It is not the federal government's job to decide how states run their elections. What I would highly recommend is to disband the AC if you want to get into the weeds of it. If there's any money left over, the only thing that the AC is allowed to spend it on is to help states transition from computerized voting to all paper voting.
I think that if we want to take our country back, we have to realize that the Democrats stole the 2020 election from President Trump. I think one of the reasons that he endorsed me is because I will say that unequivocally, and very, very few Republicans actually will. So we need single-day voting, we need to get rid of vote by mail, we need to have voter ID laws, and we need to get rid of the machines. After that, we need to go after every single one of the NGOs and all of the Democrat frauds who harvested ballots illegally in every single swing state in this country, and we need to prosecute these people and throw them in jail.
The federal government, as they've said, has no role in elections. The states have to step up and enforce voter IDs and enforce the rules, because we see that when states pass voter IDs, like Georgia did a couple of years ago, turnout actually increases. We know this to be this is a longer answer than 30 seconds. By the way, one of the huge problems with the 2020 election and why that came about the way it did was the COVID restrictions that were unconstitutionally put in place by Democratic legislatures and then upheld by Democratic state Supreme Courts. Those were absolutely unconstitutional, and states have to get control of it immediately.
I think this goes to the issue of one. First, the federal government's controlling the elections will be the worst possible thing for us. We know what happens when we consolidate power. So having the states and local manage that is necessary. But pushing for paper ballots, no electronic and whatnot. Pushing for legal enforcement, for that matter, from the community level. Where are our citizen investigators that are out there looking and seeing these mules that are coming about? Why can't we, at the grassroots level, enforce those kind of things? Thank you.
I want to make certain the question said the role of the federal government, correct?
And voter fraud.
Yes.
Hindering voter.
The answer is none. We don't trust the federal government. I don't trust them to regulate our elections. The answer is every state should do it. Texas needs to do it. We need to have paper ballots. We don't need to trust any computers. And then each state, and by the way, Texas takes the lead on almost everything, and that's what we need to do. We need to show the country how you run elections properly and fairly and guarantee that your vote counts, and then hopefully the other states will follow. But I don't trust the federal government to run any election. Thank you.
At a minimum, a requirement, if you're voting in a federal election, you need to have a federal ID that shows who you are. Number two, election day should be a federal holiday. Nobody should be denied the right to vote because they can't get there. Number three, mail-in ballots. I was in the military. The only time we ever saw mail-in ballots was when I was overseas. So getting back to that. Also, going after activist judges, going after the DOJ that refused to admit or issue any sort of investigation into wrongdoing. Time's up.
Keep the microphone, Mr. Thacker.
Yes, sir.
Which federal government agency is your greatest concern and why?
ATF is my greatest concern, sir, because the ATF, first and foremost, is making laws that are turning everyday citizens into felons. I mean, flat out. The second federal agency that I have a huge issue with is the FBI. We have 60,000 people who are bloating the FBI, turning it into an activist organization. The third is the Department of Justice, which is heavily prosecuting conservatives as opposed to Democrats, and is not taking any of our concerns seriously. I would start with those three.
The Department of Education, the woke ideology is an abomination. The Department of Education needs to go. We need to have local control. The second one is the Department of Justice. As I said, that was the catalyst for me running. We are turning into a banana republic with the way they are doing it, with the uneven-handed administration, and we need to stop that, and we need to stop that now. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would have said the Department of Education because they are literally eroding our future. But the Department of Justice is enabling the weaponization that we're seeing here. They're not enforcing. So we need to go after hard. Mayorkas, by the time I get to office, he's probably going to be out. With that being said, what's going to happen to the next one coming in? We need to control the budget for the DOJ, and if it comes down to, if it's a program that needs to be dealt with, cut off the funding there, or for the whole department, we need to keep them accountable. Checks and balances. Thank you.
They're exactly right. Department of Justice and Department of Education are both fully weaponized against Christians and conservatives, and we've seen that in Southlake. You guys remember we pushed back on the weaponization. We pushed back on CRT and DEI. We overturned the school board. It's now 7-0 conservative, and you know what the DOE did? They started civil rights investigations. I've stood up against the DOE. I've stood up against DOJ when they started coming after our conservative school board, and I'll do it again in Congress.
I was the executive producer of a movie called Police State, which traces how the federal government has been weaponized against conservatives and Christians. And I think that the number one agency that is doing that is the FBI. I think that the FBI exists for its own sake. It exists because it's been allowed to metastasize, because Congress has abdicated its authority to oversee that organization. The Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse. They should use it. We should defund the FBI. We should defund the ATF, which is eroding our Second Amendment liberties. We should defund the Department of Education. And I also think we should defund the DOJ.
Absolutely agree. Unfortunately, it's a tie for first place. Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI. It's particularly part of the FBI that's involved in counterintelligence of the U.S. It's a longer story for a longer time. But again, if you are a minority and you want to take control over a majority, you need a Praetorian Guard. In the United States, this is the guard that protects the emperor that gets so powerful, it starts choosing who is the emperor. Those are the two agencies that are doing it.
First of all, these agencies were built over many, many years. They have done a great job a long time ago and maybe even now, but at the same time, they do have corruption which needs to be fixed. It is the same way in every other country, and we are moving towards those countries. If everyone is so proud about ruining or defunding all of our systems, what are we going to have left after that? And if everyone is so proud about their educational system, let them not take the money from the federal government, because it comes down to funding.
So as you've heard, it's agency after agency after agency. It's the entire swamp now. I mean, it used to be fun when we could just pick on the Department of Education, but now it's those agencies that are designed to protect us. We have to take the stand that we are not going to fund you if you are not at least going to be responsive to us when we ask you questions and have you come up here. So first step is you get rid of this president who's enabling it all, even though he doesn't realize it, and then hold them accountable by withholding their funding.
Okay. This is a show of hands. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, should she be removed from Congress because of her statement supporting a terrorist organization? Show of hands. Okay. Next question. Show of hands. Would you support funding to Ukraine without an audit? Okay. Last question. Would you support the continual funding of Israel as they seek to decimate and destroy Hamas? Okay. Dr. Biswas says also with an audit. Ladies and gentlemen, please give these candidates a round of applause. Each candidate now has 1 minute and a half for their closing comments. And we will start with you, Mr. Army, all the way down to Mr. Thacker.
Thank you. My name again is Scott Army. Thank you so much, D3C, for hosting us this evening. This has been a good one. It's been a great one. You guys have done an outstanding job. Thank you, Colonel West, for being here, for moderating this for us. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to stand before you and to tell you about myself. As I started to mention at the beginning, I've lived here my whole life. This is my home. I've raised my family here, lived a life here. I've served in office here, and this is where I will be for the rest of my life because I love this district, I love this community, and I love all of the people who are a part of this community. I never thought I'd have another opportunity to serve in public office, but when we are called, we listen, and we do as we're told. And so I stand before you today to ask for your consideration. I'm a proven conservative. In the offices I've held, I've demonstrated that. In Denton County, people have kicked the tires on me over and over and over. If you have any questions for me, I would love to visit with you further. It would be a true honor to represent you and to carry on this work. You've heard today that you're going to get a conservative representative. I'm going to be one that's going to Washington to do the work of Congress to protect our values and to reverse course on this path that we have gone down for our kids and for our grandkids to make a better America. Thank you. Vote for Scott Army.
So first of all, thank you very much for hosting this, and of course to all of you to come and spend the time to see what we are going to say. One of the things that I did not hear from all of our candidates is how to bring the country together. We have brought this divisive idea that we need to fight this person, we need to fight that person, let's stop these other races, these other religions, but this country is very different right now, and we have the talents and successes of a lot of legal immigrants, Nobel Prize winners that have contributed to the success of this country, technology. So we cannot just look the other way and say, you know what, we're doing the right thing and let's get rid of everybody else and we will be the one nation that has only one race. I'm sorry, that does not work over here. Next thing, if you look at me, I am a first generation legal immigrant. I'm a physician who came here as a physician. And if I would take sides and say, hey, you know what, you've come to the ER, let me see if you're a Democrat or Republican or a Christian. Do you know how many people would not have access to care in this country? So before we start demolishing all of our agencies that build this into a nation, I would ask the people to select the right candidate who will do your work for you in Congress instead of trying to break down every agency and every educational system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for enduring to the end. As you've heard today, our country is in peril of becoming a tyranny, bottom line. I came to Texas, I left California, like I said, after I left communism in Europe. Why? To be free. Freedom is not free. I'm grateful for everything you guys are doing to have made this state free, and I want to do the same for you. I want to be part of defending Texas and defending liberty. All right, we're facing a problem, but America is the greatest nation on earth. And if it is unleashed from the shackles that it is suffering, which are this weaponized government that's coming out of DC by people who don't know us, don't like us, and hate us, America can recover. Believe me, I'm a business lawyer. America can recover in 6 months. It could be better than it is today in 12 months. Trump proved that with smart decisions. What I'm offering you is that I've lived under communism. I know how communism is installed. I've tried to demonstrate tonight that these are the tools used, the things that you're identifying, but those are symptoms. The cause is an attempt to subvert the United States and turn it into a tyranny. I've lived in one. I know how one's pulled off, and I want to apply my skills and my fearlessness and my integrity to be your warrior for liberty in Congress.
I think that President Trump and the House Freedom Caucus endorsed me because I'm a fighter and I'm not going to back down. So I'm going to go right into probably the most contentious issue up here, which is one of legal immigration, which I brought up. And I want to be very clear about it. This has nothing to do with race at all. My father-in-law is Indian. He came here legally from India via a merit-based immigration program. But I do think that it is very important that we remember that America is a Christian nation. It always has been, and we do not need to change that. The second thing I want to say, just to be very clear, is immigration can harm us at very high levels. Right now, the population of foreign-born Americans is higher than it's ever been since 1918. This is we have incredibly unusual high levels of legal immigration right now. And it causes lots of problems. One of them, and I'll give you an example, is housing prices and inflation. Right now, we're building somewhere around 600,000 homes every single year in this country, and yet housing prices are going through the roof. And that's particularly impacting young people who are trying to get started in life. Why is that? Part of the reason is that we're bringing in 1.1 million legal immigrants. The vast majority of those are coming via chain migration. This has nothing to do with distrusting immigrants or hating immigrants. It has everything to do with loving Americans.
So my name is John Huffman, and I'm running for Congress because I've got 3 kids, teenagers, with my beautiful wife who is here now. And I'm running because they deserve an America with a future as bright as the one that I got when I came into adulthood. And they're about to launch out into this world, and honestly, it's scary. It's a scary place. It's a lot scarier than it was when we all entered. It's a place with a broken border and ballooning budgets and a weaponized federal government that we've talked a lot about tonight. It is a place where they are looking for their American dream, but what they're finding is the Biden nightmare. And we have to, as Americans, send folks to Congress with experience in winning the victories in the battles that we know we have to fight. As mayor, I've balanced budgets. I'm going to do it again in Congress. As mayor, I've cut property taxes because I know I'm a fiduciary for my taxpayers. I'm going to do the same in Congress. We have to fix this border. I've been to the border. I know what it takes to get done. And we have to fight to get DEI and CRT out of the schools once and for all and out of government. We fought that in Southlake, and we won. And we'll do it again in DC because we know that what matters most is not the color of these kids' skin, it's the content of their character. We have to fight these battles. We have to win. Send someone to Congress who knows how to win, and let's start getting this stuff done. I'm John Huffman. Thank you so much for your vote on March the 5th.
So first, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out here. As I've gotten to know the different groups, I am in awe at your commitment, your dedication. You're going to help to change things in this country. Also, Colonel West, apologies about the misranking. Alan turned to Admiral in the heat of battle, but my last name is Kurgison. But I'm the only Jason on the ballot, so when it comes to voting...
Down south is pronounced how I pronounce it.
I'm like 30 seconds back, please. But I was going to say, what you're doing in Dallas County is admirable. We need to look at the grassroots. Because that's what we need to do. But my goal in standing up here, I'm here because I saw what the government was doing with Twitter, the Twitter files. I don't know if you're familiar, but from a techie's perspective, I was incredibly angry because that is taking away our ability to speak in a non-government regulated arena. We have the federal government is advising, and they're going along with it. That is extremely dangerous to our democracy, as they love to call it. Next is, I'm a techie. I solve complex problems with simple solutions. That is extremely valuable. I'm a problem solver. Most politicians, as you well know, are not. I'm here to help solve these problems. It's not rocket science. I think everyone here would kind of agree. It's not a difficult job. It's meant for we the people. It's meant for us to stand up here. It's a matter of us having the courage to fight and the right tools. I would appreciate your vote. Jason for Texas.com. Thank you.
I think I'm right. But anyway, we got 11 great candidates here. They are intelligent, they are articulate. I think we agree on about 80% of the things. You have to choose which one is going to represent you. What we haven't heard tonight are the intangibles. What does it take to be a leader? Okay? That's the candidate. Temperament, life experiences, getting a group together to push the agenda that we all want through Congress. What's a little uniform complaint I hear when I go out there? So we have a bunch of congressmen who have done nothing. They haven't even played good defense. The Green New Deal got through. So you have to sit here and assess each and every one of us and say, who is going to get what we want through Congress? That's a tough thing to do. But as Scott Army said, check each and every one of us out thoroughly. I think, for example, on the weaponization of the legal system, you'll find that I'm fair and I'm firm. When I make a decision, it sticks to it and I can be hard. On the issue of the economy, I'm a CPA. I know that -1 and -1 do not each equal +2. We'll fix the deficit, okay? Thank you.
Well, the night's coming to a close. Some of you might have heard me say this before, but the words that saved my life come from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, when it says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels but don't have love, I'm but a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. I love our country. I don't know how else to put it. I love what this country has done for my family. I love what this country has done for my friends. I love what it has done for me, and I love the hope that this country brings. There's nothing like the hope of being an American. Nobody up here knows what it's like to be a congressman, with the exception of the colonel. I don't know what it's like. But what I can tell you is this. I've been tempted at a level that most people can't understand. When I won Jeopardy, I was, right after the election, November 6th, I was #1 on Twitter, above President Trump, above Biden for 5 days following the election. #1 on Google. The New York Times wanted me to write an article about the president's xenophobia towards immigrants. I had a show lined up on the History Channel, a book deal, but I couldn't do it because I'm a conservative Republican. I believe in values. So I went back to my $60,000 a year job, becoming a normal citizen, and the reason why I decided to run again is because I see a dire need. Right now, we have a deficit in inertia. And trust me when I say this, I will work harder than anybody else in that room of 435 people to not disappoint you.